started out. I'm going into my 10th year here now. Obviously, we deal with admissions a lot because we recruit student athletes. So sometimes, that's a little bit of a Dutch thing, right? If you know anything about the Dutch, they think they know a little bit more than they actually do. So I'm probably part of that. But sometimes I do think that I know a little bit more than some of the admissions people do. So you've got me today. It is what it is. They did send me a video, said, oh, you can show this video. And I had just listened to my wife telling me that because we had two already, one is almost through college now, the other one is, I just dropped them off at medical school. And now we have a senior who's looking at all the colleges, so she gets to, she hops online and listens to all these presentations. And she just got done telling me how all those presentations are about how fantastic the school is, and there's nothing wrong, and it's all the most impressive stats and et cetera, right? So I'm not like that. I'm going to give you what we are and what we're not. Okay, we're not Harvard. Okay, it's that simple. That's a different institution. That's a different type of institution. Probably a different student that goes there. We are Albion. I've been here now, like I said, for almost 10 years. I was at a state system institution, so in the UW system in Wisconsin prior to this. So I do know the distinction a little bit between the private schools and the state system schools. I also, as I mentioned, have two boys now. One is already done, the other one, well, not done. He's actually starting, kind of, I guess, if you go into medical school again, but another one that's almost through school. They were at a little bit bigger private institutions. They both went to Marquette in Milwaukee. But we did a lot of college visits, just like I'm sure all of you may have already done before with other siblings, right? And then for sure are doing right now with your sons. Albion is this. It's a very good education in a safe environment, in an environment where I think students, no, I don't think, where students feel like they're part of a family. As coaches, we talk a lot about, what we sometimes wish is that we maybe had a little bit more of a niche, right? Or however you want to pronounce it, right? Meaning like, hey, we're the engineering school, or hey, we're the school to go to for X, Y, or Z, right? I'm not sure if we are. We have a lot of success stories, though, ones that we don't tell enough, and I get on admissions about it. We have a whole new marketing department now. I don't know why we don't do that better. When I look at my own student athletes that came through here, we've got doctors, we've got lawyers, and very successful ones already. We've got accountants at the biggest firms in the nation, et cetera, et cetera. I can keep on going. Teachers who are very good institutions, people that are very successful in other forms of the business world, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know why we don't do a better job of that. And maybe that's a job we got to start taking on as coaches, I guess, too. But yeah, when I look at the outcomes of people that come from school here and are done, they are very, very positive, right? The guys that wanted to become doctors are either in med school or have already gone through it. The guys that wanted to become lawyers became lawyers, right? The guys that wanted to go into accounting, most of them that were part of our Gerstecker Institute, which is our business institute, they had jobs before they walked out. Not most of them, every single one of them, because they had internships through the Gerstecker Institute at places where they also knew and felt that they would fit well, indicated, of course, by what the guys gave as feedback. And they ended up at offices and places where they worked. So that's one part of it. The outcomes are very, very positive. And it's because, hey, you're not a number here, right? You're in a classroom where your professors know who they are, who you are. If the students don't do what they're supposed to do, guess who finds out about it? I do. Right? Because that's where they go. Because they know we have some impact and influence on them more often than they can have, or a counselor or whoever, right? So then, is there 100% success rate from my end with those students? No. There are some that end up, leaving here, but they tried so darn hard to make sure that they could leave. I mean, it's almost impossible to get to that point. I'm being really honest about that. Those guys literally made a that was their goal, to get out. Because there is no other way around it. You will get a ton of support here in every way, shape, and form, right? Whether that's purely academic, mental, et cetera, that you will not fall through the cracks at Albion. That doesn't happen. Let me rewind. My wife always says, never say never. So it shouldn't happen, because there's so many parts that we do well. Again, if I compare that to the state institution where I was, I found out about it after it was too late. And I couldn't even have conversations. We couldn't have conversations with maybe the professors and the student together, et cetera. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. We want our students to come out of here ready for what's next, and we're going to make sure that we help them in every way, shape, and form that we can. Again, we're not hard, right? I just want to make that clear. We're a very good, solid institution with fantastic academics, with the outcomes that are very good. Family, I think I mentioned that. That's our niche. Tough to sell, because I think a lot of institutions may think that, or maybe even feel that. I don't know if others have it like here, because it is very special. It's even special, if I talk to colleagues in my business, right, which is soccer, I don't think it's the same based on what they're telling me at other institutions. I feel like I have a family with my colleagues and everybody that's around here. If I need something from admissions, I call the VP of admissions, Mandy. I have a direct line, and we sit down together and figure things out. If we really have to support students, there's one of the coaches here today, I won't say who it is, but he needed a lot of help because he was kind of left on his own, had to mature much quicker than he should have. Some financial constraints, et cetera, et cetera. We've got to help him out. It's happening. Literally our president, I was at the golf outing on Friday, talked to Mandy, again, our VP of admissions, talked to the president right there. We're going to make it happen. Yeah, we want to make sure that he walks away from here, going into life without having to worry about things he shouldn't have to worry about. Right? So that's the type of institution it is. I know there's been some, for sure, like 2 years ago or so, I heard that this past weekend, I guess there's another individual writing some stuff about, as many of you know, a lot of smaller institutions are starting to close, because of financial issues. Shannon Heights down the road in Adrian is closing the doors after this season, this year. We are not in that boat. Contrary to what anybody might write or whatever, absolutely not. Our credit ratings are in the right spot. We have over a $200 million endowment. We really have to, say it really straight, F it up for 20 years straight before we would blow through that. So you wouldn't have to worry about that, right? And it's not. We're in the positive. Our enrollment has gone up. Overall, our income within that has gone up. We've, tightened the belt in some areas that we could, and we're in a good spot from that perspective also. A lot of improvements happening on campus. Wesley is an area, a space for the freshmen, obviously, where they've improved all the common spaces, which was really needed. Next will be the dorm rooms. On campus, from an athletic perspective, the stadium here will get an improvement, the locker room will get an improvement. They just did Kresge, the weight room for the student athletes, which looks pretty good, but is actually getting a full overhaul again because it's ready for it, supposedly. So that's happening. A donor stepped in to do that. We have a really good president right now, individual who had to kind of clean up a few things that the previous president left. He was working so good. That's, yeah, we're really in a good spot from that perspective also. In a nutshell, again, I think we're a good, solid institution, safe environment, a family-like atmosphere. What I get a lot is feedback. I think I mentioned it to one parent today. Is we had a guy actually who's coming back now. He was at a bigger institution. And he was like, "Yeah, I only have this small of a friend group, or here I have this big of a friend group." Even though the other institution is way bigger, it kind of works in the opposite direction, right? Here they know 150 people. There they know 10 or 15. So, and probably even more here, to be really honest. One new thing that we have, is for freshmen. It's called the Summer Bridge Program. They started it last year. So they're here on campus a little bit early prior to the fall semester starting. And it's really to kind of make sure that not too many things are coming at them at once they step on campus. Everything is new, and now I've got to do, college level courses. Maybe in the case of student athlete, I've got to train, I've got to, travel, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a program that takes place for 4 weeks. Our internationals have to do it in 3.5 because they can't come 4 weeks prior because of their visa restrictions. But we have 2 international guys in it too. So again, that's something that they just make happen. They take 1 credit course, so it's a unit that'll count towards their graduation. It's completely free. They house them for free, they feed them for free. And so they take a course as well as learn all the ways around campus. They'll take them to where in the library, if they need help with writing a paper, where they should go, or if they need a math tutor or science tutor, whether they go. They need somebody to talk to. One of our therapists that where do you go for that? How does that process work? Et cetera, et cetera. So all the things on campus and around town, they'll know. So that when school starts, they feel pretty good about things. They're ready to get into it. And it's really shown and proven. It's proven at other institutions that really helps students, one, stay on campus for those that might be in the spot where and again, they're successful high school students that may not be successful college students because it is a big change. And so it's a proven thing that this keeps them on campus and has them be successful. Now, I would say, again, in the case of men's soccer and every other program here, athletic program on campus, they'll have a family, right? They'll have places to fall back on, and can ask their teammates like, hey, which science professor should I take for that class, et cetera, et cetera. Should I take that class or this class? When should I take it? What semester? Where do I go for this? How do I get to the store there, or whatever, right? So you have kind of that safety net already, but for all students, this is still a really good thing. The guys that I've spoken with that are going through it are really enjoying it. So. All right. I'll have a few more things, I think, but fire away, I guess. Questions, because I know you have some. question you should, yes.
You were talking a little bit about budget cuts and things like that.
Mhm.
How has that impacted your program as a coach, and has any of that trickled down to like the athlete's experience?
No, not for us. To be honest with you, you know, we had money left in our budget this past year. I've never been in a scenario since I've been here that we weren't able to do the things that we needed to do. You know, so that has not had an impact. We're not, the institution also understands, you know, I'm trying to think, right now, I believe we're at like 650 or so athletes, student athletes here across all the different disciplines, including, you know, our equestrian program, et cetera, too. So that's a big part of our institution. So, yeah, no cost. I would say the tightening of the belt has happened more in areas of, hey, we had 4 administrators where 2 could do the job. You know, and so those areas, that's more what's been looked at than anything, to kind of figure out smarter, better ways to do things. And that was also in individual budgets for people that went and traveled and stayed at the, you know, whatever, the $400 hotel room, or the $150 hotel room is also fine. So, or flew maybe on the times that they wanted to fly instead of flying on the times that were $300 cheap. So, more from that perspective, a little bit smarter thought processes. Yeah. They may not agree with that, but that's what it was. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Changing gears from academics for a minute
Yeah.
to your program,
Mm-hmm.
can you talk a little about vision and kind of your philosophy and your style of play and
Sure.
the type of student athlete you're looking for specifically?
So, you know, from a style of play perspective, you know, I grew up in the Netherlands, so it's really tough to kind of just throw that all overboard. You know, obviously I played through youth systems there. I did the initial coaching courses I took there. In general, we'll play 4-3-3, which is kind of, you know, comes out of the Dutch national team, Ajax Amsterdam, teams like really most teams in the Netherlands play that. You know, from an ideal perspective, we try to play, but, you know, I'm also not, for lack of a better word, you know, ignorant to the fact that, hey, that's not always possible. Sometimes somebody else is, whether it's maybe better than you at it, or so you have to be, you know, somewhat smart too. And at the end of the day, you know, when it comes down to it, say for sure, specific games, it's about winning and how do we win that game. And so then the method may be adjusted a little bit. Hey, maybe we sit in a little bit more. Maybe we figured out that their left back is the guy we got to pick on, and how quickly can we get it into that space because he's not good with balls in behind him, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I'll tell you this, you know, I mentioned that to the guys today too. In the last year and a half, 2 years or so, we've done a lot of training sessions where, for instance, we don't allow the ball to go through the air. We want to play on the ground, so we force everybody to play out on the ground too. You know, one, because too often we use long and high and big, where maybe we can still play out, right? You know, the other reason is that if you don't force that, you know, we still go back to that way too quick, right? So, and it's helped. I think we definitely started to play a lot better soccer. We also have some better soccer players. You know, our younger guys definitely had a lot of impact this past year also. We've kind of, I don't want to say a reset, but a little bit of hit a reset button from that perspective. When I first came here, you know, hindsight, right? But I probably should have pull the plug on more players, because that's trickled a little too long. And did a harder reset at that point. I didn't, because I felt, you know, the student athletes can come here before I was appointed. Some of it is on me, because I also came from a program that historically had always won. And so then you think that's a mindset and a thought process that's normal. And it wasn't necessarily, it was a little more intramural here. But we're definitely in a much better space from that perspective. I think that shows kind of in everything. It's a really tight group. Are we the top D3 team in the nation? No. But it's a really fun group of guys, in a good way. They're really good off the field. It's the highest GPA we've had, team GPA. We had a 3.42, 4.1, I can't remember, cumulative, so that's pretty darn good, you know, with the guys. So that's direction that we like. The new guys coming in, I think, are just going to add more to that. We are a little deeper in numbers this year than we have been in the past, so we're getting a little bit bigger from a roster size perspective, which we also feel, you know, Reese and I have talked about that a lot, feel is needed. Just a little bit more competition, just to keep everybody on their toes a little bit more. We will not go to the 40-man rosters that a lot of college teams have. We'll make sure everybody travels. I did mention one of the parents also that, hey, we are playing a few reserve games, so to speak, in early September this year, in the month of September, just so we can kind of catch ourselves if we make a mistake potentially, right? Meaning, hey, we're evaluating based on training, you know, for some positions we may not change as much, right? And so if we can now see him in a different environment, we might go, okay, we got to rethink that potentially, right? And so that's more for us than anything else. We kept 15 games and then we do 3 of those, so we could have just played 18 full squad game or whatever, you know, not JV first team games, but we decided to do it that way. So, yeah. I'm pretty direct. I told the guys that too after the first training, like, hey, I'm gonna say things, you know, that doesn't mean I don't like you or that I think you know, I told it to them, I said that I think you stink or whatever, you know, that you're not good enough. No, it's just, hey, here's the information, let's do with it, you know, this is what I think you can do with it. But, you know, that's in the training environment, right? We do, through the course of like a semester in the fall, there's at least 3 to 4 conversations with the individuals. That's from us initiative. The doors have open all the time. That doesn't include the conversations after a training or somebody says, hey, coach, can I come see you? You know, I'm just not sure about what you're asking here or whatever, right? So we don't want there to be any doubts, right? We're not going to make the decision that everyone likes because there's only 11 darn spots that, you know, guys that can start, right? But that's also a thing, and we talk about that a lot. Don't only look at who starts, look at who finishes. Because that usually gives you more of an indication of where coaches, you know, think you are than necessarily the start. So, and that's the same in the recruiting process. We're going to be honest. So, hey, you know, this is kind of where we see you at. And again, I think I mentioned that to you earlier today. I've made mistakes there too. I'll be the first to admit that. You know, very simple. Didn't take a guy, and a year later he puts one in against us, or 2. Right? And that happens because I mean they change. I mean, you know that. You know, they change, right? Their body changes, this changes, and you can't. You just can't unless you spend a ton of time and you do, you know, a ton of testing and conversations to figure out where you are. You know, if you go to, like I mentioned, Ajax Amsterdam, they actually interview the players with their parents, and they pick up a lot out of that, right? mean, there's a lot of conclusions that they pull out of those conversations, and highly talented kids will not make it because of those conversations. But not just because of parents, but just conversations with the individual players too. You know, I mentioned outside today, I was watching Wayne Rooney is, you know, for those of you who don't know him, he's a British guy who didn't have much success in coaching, but he was a very, very good player. 16-year-old, you know, made his debut for Everton, then went to Man United, one of the all-time greats, no question about it. And they had a piece on him because he's going into the EPL Hall of Fame, the English Premier League Hall of Fame. And I mentioned that to the guys, and what do you think his teammates and everybody that was talking about him in that piece was talking about? His talent, his unbelievable goals. Sure, they mentioned that. But more than anything, what they mentioned is that he wanted to win in everything that he did. And so that's much more of an indicator of an athlete than talent, right? We were at the golf outing on Friday. I was listening to our men's basketball and football coach talking about a local kid here who had, I guess, talent beyond belief on the playground, you know, in basketball, football, whatever. He was the best by far. And how he failed because he didn't have a spine, you know, he didn't have the grit, he didn't have the real want, the desire to win. And so, yeah. So that's what we look at. We try to identify that. What do you do off the ball? How do you react when you lose it? What do you do around your teammates in a warm-up? Are you, you know, helpful? Are you the first away from the field when things need to be cleaned up, for instance? You know, just little things like that. Now, can we get that out of a recruiting process? Not always. We just can't. You know, I'll be honest about it. We just can't. But in games, yeah, that's why we don't always let guys know if we're at a high school game or whatever. We just watch. We don't even let them know sometimes if they're there at the end. You know, just because sometimes it's not good either, right? Because they do more than they need to think they should. You know, and again, we make mistakes. 100%. So, yeah. Good question. Yes.
As far as a time commitment for the boys that are on the soccer team,
Yep.
what is your expectations of that?
Well, we'd like it to be done, you know, as quick as possible, but it's also, you know, I think it's good that we're not in a boat like D1 women's soccer coaches are, where they have to make that decision really early. For us in general, I would say commitment come anywhere between September through sometimes even March or April. You know, that's not the ideal picture on that end, but that sometimes lies in somebody not sure yet what type of school they want to go to. We're willing to be patient with them. Some of our internationals are a little bit later sometimes because they didn't know that they wanted to go abroad. Our application is open, if that's what you're asking. That's what I heard from Andy. They were reading. Reese works in admissions a little bit, and so he reads applications. So that's starting up already.
I think my question might not have been phrased correctly.
Okay.
Once the boys are on the team and they're here,
Oh,
as far
sorry.
as like a weekly, like, do you practice 5 days a week?
Oh, sorry. My bad.
Sorry, no,
Yeah,
I
my
loved your
bad.
answer though.
My wife will tell me you reacted too quick, so.
I loved your
You
answer.
didn't
That was
listen.
very helpful.
So when we're here, we have to, per NCAA rules, we have to give 1 day off a week. That's a given, okay? So that's during the season, right? During the off season, it's more than that. We're only allowed to touch the players a certain amount of time. So a regular, like a normal preseason will look something like this. We'll check in the 15th, we'll start on the 16th. 16th in the morning, we'll have a test, kind of afternoon we train. We do that throughout the first week plus. We'll go 2 times a day. We'll mix in there some team, you know, bonding type of activities. We'll have some introduction with our strength and conditioning coach, Coach Fred, so that they kind of know what expectations are there. We don't do a ton of strength and conditioning during the season, but we do some, especially in the beginning, and then we kind of taper off to the end, towards the end of the season. I'm big on quality versus quantity, very big. I don't train past really an hour and a half per session. If we go 2 a days, it's closer to like an hour and 15. We might be on the field for an hour and a half, but we're not training for an hour and a half. So that's kind of week 1. After that, we start school, it's once a day. Now, they may have a strength and conditioning session on top of the training session on 2 days during the week. One is usually organized with Coach Fred, the other one is generally then on their own. Hey, on Monday, on your own, make sure you get lift X in, right? On top of that, we'll have some video sessions, 2, 3 a week maybe. Could be right before training starts, could be right after training, depending on if we're the early session, late session. So we share the field. We don't have to go on football. We share the field with women's soccer, with lacrosse, who are in the off season, so to speak, so they come in after whatever time they're open, they hop in. Ron and I have a really good relationship. We'll block us, we'll say, hey, from an ideal perspective, I want to train at 4:30 that day because we play the next day. I go, all right, well then I take the late session, right? So 5 to 6 times a week, we'll have something during the season. We did the scheduling together yesterday. Ron and I just kind of fine-tuned everything. I have a few moments in there where I'll give 2 days off because I kind of think, hey, that's the time of the year that we may do that. I'll put a few days in there that I don't have in there that I might use if I feel hey, guys need a break. Right? Reese and I are going to experiment a little bit again with some morning sessions the day after this, so that we come in for a recovery session. That'll probably be with Adrian, our head trainer. He'll do some yoga with guys that didn't play a lot, or with me and Reese. We're going to kind of train them, and then the other guys might hop in at the end. It'll just be an hour or 45 minutes. And we're doing that the morning after on some days, so that we can then give them a free evening, so they can do whatever they need to do to they might have some study groups or whatever that they have to do stuff with, and then have kind of almost 2 days off, because then we won't train again until late the next evening. So we really try to be mindful of the balance, right? He's probably not in high regards anymore, but I lived in Green Bay for a while. I had the pleasure to speak with Holmgren quite a few times, and his big thing was, I tell players, hey, we've got this time slot, I'm not going to go over it. Whether the session was fantastic or was horrific, if I go past it, then I'm messing with the time that I told them they had. So I'm going to have pissed off, wives and girlfriends, and, sons and daughters, because they didn't go home, or couldn't go home, or couldn't go to an appointment that they wanted to go to, and the players get pissed off. So we try to stick to what we put out. If there is a change that we have to make, we try to make sure it's as early as possible. But yeah, so going into the off season, we give them time off, after the season, but then they'll usually start to do futsal in here or still outside, depending on the weather. Prior to the Christmas break, when they come back, they'll start with Coach Fred 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week, and then we have now a total of 24 sessions that we can be with them, and so we spread that out over about 8 weeks or so. Scrimmage date, and then some training sessions in the spring. Good question.
Any academic requirements?
If incoming freshmen will always have study sessions with us. One will be with either Reese or myself. We'll have either this room or the room downstairs, the glass, kind of, we call it the glass meeting room there. That's once. The other time is where they swipe in to the, and we can see it, to the library, and they have to be there at least an hour and a half or two. There's a lot of support, again, from the teammates with that. If returning guys are below a 3-point, they have to come to those sessions also. So anything below a 3-point, they have to participate. They get out of it, they don't get out of starting it, but they get out of those mandatory sessions if they're above a 3-point. Yeah. And again, our GPA has, kept going up. This year, that was a big jump. That was like a 22 something jump that we had. And that's usually because one or two guys decide, well, to be those guys that didn't go to the class. Yeah.
In the past, the men's soccer program had the opportunity to play in California. Was that a one-time thing, or is that, no?
No, that would be something again. Yeah.
Okay.
So that, we try to do it like every 2, maybe 3 years,
Okay.
that we go somewhere. In all honesty, I've stayed away from the international trips. Been asked about it a lot. I did one to the Netherlands with a group. To be really, really honest with you, I stay away from it because of the liability.
Yeah.
I don't want to put myself in that scenario. I'll say it because I'm an honest guy. It's just the way it is. We did it in the Netherlands. We were in Amsterdam 2 nights. The last night I closed my eyes and I said, okay, don't be alone. Come back, right? Don't ever be alone. You've got to be in 2s at a minimum.
Yeah.
I don't want to know what you did. We're leaving at 5, whatever, we had to go to the airport. No, it was a little bit later than that, 6:30. You've got to be there.
Yeah.
But I did homestays, everything at my old club and different club that a buddy of mine coached, and I had a good friend of mine coached in the youth pro system. So we played FC Groningen, which is where like Arjen Robben and the Koeman brothers and whatever all grew up and played. Koeman's dad was the one that poured us coffee when we sat in the clubhouse there, and it was fantastic. The homestays were fantastic, but again, it's a different environment. You go to the clubhouse at home, they, after the game, they have a beer together. And so, I had a few guys that we went on we did a sailing trip also to the island. We all had to go in the morning on a bike ride to the beach. We got to the beach, and Coach Wietz is about to take a picture, and I'm standing there. Everybody was up, and I'm standing there, I'm taking a picture. Hannah? Where's Hannah? Where's Hansi? They were all. Well, they went back to sleep. So when we came back to the boat, they were like cleaning the kitchen and whatever else. So they'd been out the night before. So we came back the next day to my club, and I told them, hey, no more drinking for you.
Yeah.
You can't. So they came out and it was like, oh, my 16-year-old, host brothers have beer. Clearly, your 16-year-old host brother, you don't have, and you don't. So, but I mean, and again, I'm not supporting drinking or whatever. I'm not. I'm just saying, hey, that's just things that are different in different cultures, right? And so, I would have to get a written statement from every parent that says, hey, my son knows exactly what he's allowed to do based on what him and I have talked about, and I just don't want to go there. But we'll definitely do similar things to that. Yeah. So we were in California this past year. I was a foreign exchange student in California, so we had some games around there, and then my host brother, my American brother, hosted us, at his house. So we'll do things like that. Yeah. Probably do an East Coast one. Because I think there's a high value in that piece of the experience for the student, and that is what D3 So, obviously the coaches evaluate today. We may not see everything we want to see, right? So don't, for your sons, it's good to connect with us, right? If they're 2026s and hey, you know, I want to get going, kind of know which 3 or 4 places I might really want to take serious. You know, by all means, connect with us. You know, we'll try to get back to them as quick as possible. For some, we may want to just see them once or twice more. In a high school setting, Reese and I do get on the road a ton during the fall to watch as many games as we can too on top of our own schedule. You know, it's yeah. Some don't believe in watching the high school games, but I think it's got a value. You know, most of them we know how to pick some games that it's going to be just as good of a game as any whatever good club game. Right?
Are you able to watch club games too at any point in the?
Yeah. So we do. I have to be honest. We do way less of the running to showcase events. You know, I used to be at whatever Grant Park a lot. You know, other places and 50 fields and freaking. I felt like I needed a golf cart to get from one to the other. Never felt like you actually evaluated a player the way they should have been evaluated. So we tend to do the smaller events, but there's maybe 3 fields, you know, whether it's at a Wixom or at a club or, you know, the club hosts an event. That's what we hit way more than whatever, the Disney Showcase type of events or the, you know, like I said, the Grand Park type of events, just because, yeah, the value is less for us. It's less effective and it's just, I don't have anxiety, but man, I close to it when I went to those events because you just feel like you got to run from field 1 to field 50,
And once
you're not
the
seeing them.
like following up on that, and once the interest for your program advances, how do you like kind of get to the kind of confirmation stage? How do you see them more? Is it video? Is it going to one of their games?
Yeah,
or
one of their
bringing
games,
them
more
here?
a little more video sometimes. You know, if they send us video, hey, by all means, that's great. But as I mentioned earlier too, you know, what you don't see in video, I've made videos for someone that was going to play collegiate for us. He got a few offers, but he didn't like the schools where you know, where he got the offers. You tend to not put on there when, you know, they lose the ball and maybe they were like, hey, you. No. Yeah. So we like to see it with our own eyes from an ideal perspective. You know, again, in all fairness, with the international, we tend to not see that.
And how do you do that? How do you see them?
Yeah, we go to the high school games. We go to the club games. We go to club training sessions. We ask club coaches. Like Reese, I'm connected. But Reese is even more connected than I am in the Michigan area. You know, he grew up here. He played for the Wolves. You know, he did the whole circuit here, right? He coached high school. I mean, the guy pops names at me, or I go, you know. So it's a combination. And another thing that we use a lot, and we don't just use that for us, but we use that more than anything for the prospective student athlete, is they come on campus, and whether you stay overnight or whether you come in an afternoon and you do another tour, maybe you meet with the Gersacker Institute, or you meet with the Honors Institute, or you meet with the you know, the Wilson Institute because you want to go into the medical field, or whatever may be the case, or you sit in on a class. You hang out with the guys for lunch, you stay with them after, and then you maybe go play with them futsal in here, or maybe you come watch a game. But you get to interact a little bit more, and now you say, I'm not sure, I want to hang out with those guys, right? So, and that could be the case, right? Because this family is not the fit for everybody. You know, and we're not offended by that. You know, this isn't, you know, some guys in D1 may have the dream yet of becoming a pro and whatever else. Most of the guys here don't have that. They have the dream of becoming a pro, again, doctor, lawyer, you know, business owner, teacher, whatever, you know, medical assistant, whatever, right? So we understand that. And so go to a place where you feel right, where you walk onto campus. Again, I've done this with my own kids. You know, the first time they go and they say, ah. Second time we go and they see some things, they go, mom and dad see some things maybe that they didn't, right? I mean, I love when parents say it's their entire decision. It's never the case, come on. Never there. Yeah. It's never entirely their decision, right? Finances may play a big role, right? So when the FAFSA comes out, what does that look like? For us, if you know somebody that went to Albion, make sure you have that individual as a referral, because that in itself gives you, I believe this last year was a $3,000 scholarship. Right? Maybe you know a player here, or you know a parent that has, somebody in football or whatever. Use them as a referral. That's an extra. So those types of scholarships become even more important if you don't qualify for financial aid, right? For actually FAFSA, federal financial aid, et cetera. Because now you might be 4.0 or a 33 test score, and you're getting full whammy there. You're getting the visit scholarship. You're getting the referral scholarship. Hey, now you've already knocked off enough to be down to our sticker price is 70 something, whatever. You've knocked off down enough. You're in the 26 or 28 range. So, that's without anything else. So, yeah.
So you mentioned that a lot of the players, maybe soccer is their primary focus, they're going to be doctors, lawyers, etc. Is that reflected in training sessions, or are the players still able to keep everything?
Well, listen, we run our program like a D1 program, right? The biggest difference is the biggest difference is that we can't be with them as much as D1s are, right? I'm not always sure if that's good. So meaning like, hey, when they go into the off season, they're with them, 3-4 times a week, right away again. We have less of that, but you come here any day. Basketball is out of season. Those guys are playing. They're playing aggressive. They're working out with Coach Fred. We have 2 strength and conditioning coaches. I mean, everything is. The Europeans that come here, the professionals that I had a buddy, a friend of mine who went into the professional game. They don't have that, right? So we're serious about it. That's I'm not going to be accepting of the fact that you say, hey, my academics are coming in the way right now. I'm going to say, okay, let's talk about your time management. What's going on here? Because I know you have X amount of hours to be able to do what you need to do in order to be academically successful. But don't use that as an excuse, please, because
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question, do the players still? Because we've been in club programs and even some of the high school programs where players don't necessarily take it as seriously, and there's a big dynamic shift of players when you have players that are taking it very seriously and players that aren't. It causes a really big risk.
Yeah, so I would say that would be the kind of what I mentioned, like, hey, that was a little bit of an intramural thought process initially when I came here. Like, hey, our fraternity is a little more important, our party scene is a little more important, our social scene is a little more important, my academics is a little more important, and now there's soccer. Yeah, that's definitely not what we want.
Okay, so there's
So
more
that's
unified
shifted.
team drive.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and I would say again, there's some younger guys who are really, really good, and they've helped with that a ton. Because at the end, I mean, we have an influence as coaches, but I'd be lying to you if I said I'm the driving force of it, because I'm not.
Yeah.
Neither is Reese, right? That's
That's
from within. Yeah.
Another question, you may or may not know this one, so maybe admissions. So going through the different tours that we've done, looking at SAT scores, I know the 2026 year is test optional for a lot of schools. I've been at some that they're like at 1280, you get a full, huge $10,000 scholarship, and like NSU was anything under 1350, do not send it, it will hurt you.
Right.
Do you know, does Albion have a number that they recommend?
They will, so at Albion, we're so nice, we're gonna grab what's best for you. So if you submit your, whatever, your 4.2, or your 3.9, depending on, reals, whatever, right? And you submit your 1300, the 4.2 at your specific school gets you at the higher scholarship, they're gonna grab the 4. Yeah. And they're gonna disregard the 13, or vice versa. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah. It is test option, no question about it, but I would always submit it if you don't. Yeah.
You mentioned that applications are open.
Mhm.
Do you suggest the current seniors apply now while they're, before, anything is set recruiting wise? Just start applying?
Because it may be set. You may, so they have, even for the FAFSA, the financial aid, there's calculators now that get so darn close that that's almost, it's not 100%, but it's darn close. So you can fill in as long as you're honest about, family income, blah, 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 all of those things. Again, family income is not an only indicator, right? There's a lot of other indicators. There might be, huge medical bills, or, one of the parents lost a job for a little while, and this is where we're at right now. That will all be taken into consideration. You can't necessarily put that all in that calculator, but you can talk with somebody in financial aid about it. They will give you an honest opinion of, hey, where that may then end up. Women's, our volleyball team, I would say they're pretty much set by end of September, beginning of October. That's before FAFSA comes out. And it's because, well, certain clientele. But the other thing is that they want to be set. That's just a timeline for volleyball recruiting. And so they go more by the calculator. But historically, we've had some come in early, but then most people want to wait for the FAFSA, even when they know for sure they want to come. It's not needed anymore, to be really honest with you. And I'm not saying that to sell some, flaw things. It's just, that's the way it is. That calculator is really, really darn close. And it may be off by a few $100 at a time. Yeah. Anything else? Really good question. So, everybody that applies, you can use Common App. I'm assuming most of you are familiar with the Common App, right? You can add colleges to it, do the application done at one time. I think there's a max number with it, but, that's pretty high. Some require still some individual things depending on the college, then even with the Common App. But that's a good route to go. Simply add it, get your FAFSA in early, because then you also get the response the earliest. That is how that works. So you apply and you don't get your FAFSA in, you get your FAFSA in way later, then you get in behind dollars. They should have their together this year. From that perspective, that's got a lot better last year. The year before that, it might have been April maybe when it came out, March somewhere. It was super late.
Yeah.
This year it should be, the kinks are out of it, I think. So they know. So November look like mid-November is when that should come out, if you have any. So, yeah. And that's for every school. Always, this is the last thing I'll give you. That's for most private institutions. Don't be afraid to ask. And that's the same with financial things, right? You may get no, but they may say, okay, for the sake of argument, you're looking at Manchester University in Indiana. And, he wants to really come to Albion, but Manchester University's scholarship is $3,000 better. Not the scholarship, the bottom line. Okay. Throw it in front of them, see what they say. I didn't say that. I just think it's just something, I didn't know this about private school. I sat here with my first assistant who went to school at Oshkosh, where I was, and we'd gone through it just for the heck of it. he was an Illinois student, and in Wisconsin at the time, they had a special deal for Illinois students. They got to go to school for like time and a half, I believe, of an in-state student, so a lot better than an out-of-state student. But he said, yeah, my parents not gonna know that I probably could have gone to a private school for $5,000 less per year. It's crazy. And, I had my first one last year with federal aid. This was a really special circumstance. If he took the 5,500, he was in the negative. Negative 3,000. Crazy. But, yeah, special circumstances. But don't be afraid to ask, on everything, not just money, but also any other question. Again, that's what they're good at here. If you wanna meet with someone specifically about, a specific direction, academic direction,